How Putin's invasion is changing our world forever. Nobody could have ever imagined that in the 21st century, in the heart of Europe, more than 80 years after the end of World War II, a real bloody war would break out with bombings and tens of thousands of killings, and forever change the course of history despite the warnings of Western intelligence. The invasion of Ukraine by Russia is a watershed moment in the history of the world, and its repercussions are likely to be felt for many years to come. No doubt that it is already changing our world forever. It all began in 2014, when forces loyal to Putin seized control of Crimea, a peninsula located in southern Ukraine. Passports of Russian were eventually distributed to the local populace. At the time, the action appeared to be nothing more than opportunistic. The conquest of Crimea was popular among Russians, many of whom believed that the land should not have been handed over from the Russian Soviet Federation of Socialist Republics to the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic in 1954. The annexation of Crimea and Russia's support for insurgents operating in Ukraine's Luhansk and Donetsk regions is beginning to look more and more like it was part of a larger plot to take Ukrainian territory. On the battlefield in Ukraine right now, the primary conflict pitting democracies against autocracies is only beginning to take shape. A fresh round of the Cold War is about to break out globally. As a result of Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022, the established world order was destroyed, and almost 80 years of peace have passed in Europe, almost without incident. Additionally, the invasion of Ukraine disrupts the food supply for a significant portion of the planet's 8 billion inhabitants. Mr. Putin has been deaf to these arguments for a very long time, and the way other people perceive the past is of little concern to him. He declared less than 6 months after he seized Crimea that people with their own views on our country's history might argue with me, but I think that the Russian and Ukrainian peoples are practically one single people, no matter what others might say. In a rambling address he gave in February, 3 days before Russian missiles began raining on Ukrainian cities, Vladimir Putin bemoaned the loss of the territorial holdings of the ancient Russian Empire. After 8 months of the assault, his soldiers possessed around 18% of the territory in Ukraine. However, things are not going as expected at all. The Ukrainian counteroffensive is continuing to gain ground and drive Russian troops back. Russia announced that it had annexed 4 eastern and southern areas of Ukraine on September 30th, following a series of sham referendums. Despite this, Russia does not fully control these territories. When Mr. Putin made the announcement, he criticized the false rules of the West, which included the inviolability of borders. However, Russia is in a more vulnerable state as a result of his invasion. He went against the course of history by embarking on an invasion of a sovereign nation that was located nearby. He is failing, but this does not stop the invasion from changing the world forever. What Mr. Putin is attempting to accomplish is known as imperial conquest, also known as conquering a country to claim its territory as its own. According to an article published last year by the historian and author Yuval Noah Harari, most governments ceased seeing wars of aggression as a legitimate weapon to further their goals, and most nations stopped fantasizing about conquering and annexing their neighbors. Isn't it strange how the invasion of Putin may change the entire world forever, in the blink of an eye? Keep watching to find out what is currently at stake. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, we witnessed the rebirth and expansion of an order that was, in most respects, predicted on rather liberal values. This, in turn, was based on the United States' unparalleled position of power within the framework of international politics. This is an order that Vladimir Putin has never agreed with, and the conflict that is currently taking place in Ukraine and across Europe can best be seen as a struggle over this order. Russia has never approved of this, and it certainly did not approve of the idea that this directive should be extended to Ukraine. A change from the situation that prevailed following the conclusion of the Cold War will take place, at the very least, if they are successful in stopping this order from being carried out. So, what is truly at stake with this invasion, and how is it changing the world forever? Obviously, the future of Ukraine is hanging in the balance. The basic issue that is being fought over in the streets in the sky above Ukraine is the right of the Ukrainian people to select their own cultural and geopolitical orientation. This right is at stake in the conflict that is taking place in Ukraine. But for the rest of the world, what's at stake is a clash between two countries, the United States of America and Russia, which together own 90% of all of the nuclear weapons on the planet. Despite the fact that Russia does not appear to be economically significant, a conflict that is allowed to fester and then continues to escalate between these two countries would present the potential of a serious escalation, which would be a threat to people everywhere. This is not the typical kind of disagreement we deal with, rather the contrary. There are now substantial economic repercussions, such as inflation, rising energy prices, and other related issues. Another change, albeit one that is likely less permanent, is the skyrocketing price of food, energy, and pretty much everything else. This change is inflicting suffering on multiple continents and is mostly driven by the disruption that the war has caused to suppliers. The term high inflation, which was common practice for people who endured the energy crisis of the 1970s, is making a comeback as a topic of everyday conversation. The term stagflation, which refers to a pernicious combination of high inflation and slowing economic growth, is being thrown around as a potential threat by some economists. However, there is also the possibility of increased insecurity, and the event that this situation escalates into a major cyber competition between the two sides. The fact that we are free to travel, we have a sense of openness in the world, and we are optimistic about our common economic prospects are all things that would change. The last 80 years have been among the most tranquil in recorded history, yet all of that might end at any moment if this situation is not resolved. We've experienced horrible wars. We encountered them in the Southern Hemisphere. Even in the early 1990s, we were able to find them in the Balkans. On the other hand, there has not been a major battle between superpowers that have been lurking in the background with enormous nuclear weapon arsenals. The level of existential crisis that we are discussing here cannot even be produced by the horrendous atrocities carried out by Al-Qaeda in the United States. Because there is no sign of an end to the war, it is impossible to judge what the future holds. However, the number of casualties and the extent to which the conflict has spread across the world both increase the longer fighting continues, and the prospect of peace becomes less likely. On the other hand, the toll in terms of human life has already been exceptionally high in Ukraine. There have been at least 16,500 deaths on both sides of the conflict, with some estimating that number to be as high as 50,000. Estimates for this number vary. Ben Wallace, the defense minister for the United Kingdom, stated in September that there had been 80,000 casualties on the Russian side, including deaths and injuries. Surprisingly, the effects of the bomb became normalized for people, and they figured out how to live with it. The invasion of a country can have big effects, not just on that country, but on the entire world. These events have shaped and changed the course of history, reshaped international relations, and fundamentally altered the lives of millions of people. Even the actions of just one leader, like Putin, can have a big impact on the world, because wars and invasions can have consequences that last for a long time. That will be all for today's video. Thanks for staying tuned. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and notification bell so that you can always get to watch more amazing videos like this. See you in the next one. Make sure to check out this next video chosen for you. See you there.